Welcome back to another episode of Buckle Up, an ultra running conversation. Mandy, how are you doing? Did you just run a race this weekend? I thought I saw you run like a road race in the neighboring town of yours.
No, I did. I have a friend. We're co-race directors. We're actually putting on a race together this year. He has a series in a town next to me. And in this space of race directing, it's pretty common that another race director reaches out and tells you you're running their race. And you don't really have to register for it. And most often you don't have to pay for it. You just get a free bib to go run. And so I did a little 10K and then I ended up winning first in my age group. So I did. Last minute 10K race. Did you do any running? Yeah. Did you do any running this weekend?
I did. I am sort of tapering for the marathon in Fort Collins this weekend. I think the same town that you ran in. I will be running the Colorado Marathon come Sunday, May 4th. And I did get out for some track work on Saturday. I'm doing some pacing work for that race. And then on Sunday, I got into the foothills here of my town where it was dry enough to run, 10 miles or so. So yeah, I got out and ran this weekend.
Well, I wasn't going to go watch the Colorado Marathon, but I might have to go check it out now.
We should talk after this about the Colorado Marathon and my visit to the northern Colorado area next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you watch like the Cocodona stuff, like the live stream, and get some FOMO and just sit there and watch it all day thinking, gosh, I should do this sometime?
Yeah, going into this year, I watched so many live streams last year that going into this year, I said I was going to run a 200-mile race and I've yet to sign up for anything. So obviously it's probably too far gone, but I think what's cool about the live stream is it really does start to paint a picture of those longer distance races, even though you can't see it and feel it, but it does produce a little FOMO. So they're on my list of bucket list items. I just haven't pulled the trigger yet.
Well, our guest today, Ana Robbins, got her start from watching the Cocodona as well, live stream. And she thought, gosh, if I'm going to sit here and not be productive for a week, I might as well go run the damn thing. So that's what she did. She's been running ultras since 2020, and she went straight to the top, straight to the farthest one you could go to. And she tells us all about the Monster 300, her most recent accomplishment, just, I guess, earlier this month in Arizona.
Yeah, we kind of dig through her ultra sign-up resume, which is quite impressive because she really did just go from 0 to 100-mile races, didn't stop and do really the marathon or 50-mile distance. It was fun to hear about those early years of running for her and taking the dive to 300 and what that journey was like. It included a pair of Crocs that we'll get to hear about. I have a pair behind me.
If you're watching the video, Mandy has a pair propped up, and it's an interesting story. So we might as well just get to the fact here. Why do you have Crocs on your desk behind you? And how did you acquire them?
So as Ana was telling her story that you'll hear and her interaction with Crocs on the course, it reminded me that during one of my races, my crew picked up the wrong bag, brought it home with us to Colorado, got home, opened, going through the bags, found a pair of Crocs with like a really nice shirt. And I think there was a headlamp in there. And we had somehow identified who it had belonged to. And I emailed the race directors to let them know we have someone else's drop bag. And maybe it was like a bib number that was in there, something maybe drop the tag on the bib. Anyways, got in touch with the guy, mailed him back the rest of his belongings, but he didn't want the Crocs. He just said, don't worry about sending them. And that was last year. That was a year ago. And these Crocs are still sitting in my office. So maybe I should just go back to his address and mail them back to him. I don't know why we didn't end up sending them, but maybe he ran some miles in his Crocs and dropped them at the aid station, similar to what Ana did.
It's the first I heard of this, but apparently you can cover a couple miles on a bike path in Crocs. It's the first I ever heard. In off-brand Crocs, just to be specific. So no shout out to Crocs brand itself. Quite the opposite. I think it's a Walmart Croc story.
Yeah, future sponsorship there. Off-brand Crocs. Let us know if you would like us to talk more about runners who complete ultra crazy distances in your shoes.
Off-brand Crocs, it's a new rage. Yeah. She's gonna have them at Cocodona. She'll be at the Summit 200. Hopefully she doesn't bring those Crocs to Summit 200. It might not be the right shoe.
It's not gonna work.
Although there is a bike path section of 7 miles along the lake, along Dillon Reservoir.
So if we're out there, we should maybe just bring a pair and meet her there.
I might be there.
Tempt her with a good time. You want to put these on?
Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. We appreciate you listening. We'd love to hear comments, feedback. If you have ideas for guests, for conversations you'd like to hear, we'd love that feedback as well. And without further ado, here is Ana Robbins and her 300 Monster recap. Hi, Anna. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. So nice to have your presence on the show. We want to hear all about your most recent achievement at the Monster 300. But beforehand, why don't we start with like a 10,000 foot view? Who is Ana Robbins?
Thank you, Brian. Hey, Mandy. Great to be here with y'all. I am a Georgia runner, as maybe you can tell from my accent. And I'm actually pretty new to running. I just started running in 2020 during the pandemic. And I very quickly accelerated the distance I was running. I sort of understood from early on I was never going to be able to compete in speed, but I like to win things. I like to be good at things. So I decided to compete on distance. Within a year of starting to run, I ran my first race, which was 100 miles up here in the Duncan Ridge Trail in North Georgia. And then a year later, I ran Tahoe 200. And then a year later, I ran Cocodona for the first time. So I guess my profession is I'm a nonprofit entrepreneur and sort of social startup person, and that's sort of my headspace and where I come from. And the running thing is relatively new, but actually there's a lot of corollaries between the two.
I was looking through your ultra sign up, and it really just escalated from, I don't know, 100 mile to 200 to 200 plus to the most recent 305, 307, whatever it is for the Monster 300. And so it kind of just speaks to exactly what it is. I think we met a little less than a year ago at dinner before Summit 200 in Summit County at, I believe it was a Thai restaurant. I can't remember though.
Yeah.
We all got some cool Thai food.
Yeah, you had just marked the course.
Yeah, I was volunteering as a course marker, and all you guys were participants, and I kind of like rained on your parade and just jumped in because you guys were talking on social media. You guys were talking on social media about going to dinner and having dinner plans with all the participants, and I just invited myself. So there I was.
Yeah, that was an awesome way to meet you, and that's also interesting because Summit 200 last year in 2024 was the inaugural race. Like the Monster 300 this year was an inaugural race, so it was interesting to have those two experiences sort of close together and you know, just to compare the two.
Are those your only two inaugural races?
That's a good question. Yes, they're not my only. It's not Summit wasn't my only small race. We have a lot of small races here in Georgia. I do. But yeah, those are my first inaugurals, my only inaugurals. I forever regretted not being at the inaugural year of Cocodona. I, of course, like barely even knew what it was at the point. But in hindsight, the jealousy that I have, like the fact that you never go back and get that, it's just like I knew. I actually didn't even sign up for the Monster initially. At the initial burst, when everyone signed up for it, I actually was like, I love Aravaipa. I want to do more Aravaipa races, and I'm not gonna do that right now. But I had such fear of missing out when all my friends were in the race, and so I said, okay, I'm just gonna make a compromise with myself. I'll put my name on the wait list. It's not the same as signing up, but of course, then one thing leads to another, and next thing you're signed up for the Monster.
Yeah, Anna, going back to Brian's point, looking at your ultra sign up, if you started running in 2020, it escalated very quickly, and I didn't see any distances shorter than 100 on your ultra sign up resume. What did that look like, and how did you go from, I mean, were you a runner at all? Were you doing shorter distance races, or was it just straight to 100?
Saw like something on YouTube or maybe something from Courtney DeWalter early on, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to see how far I can go. And so I had no idea what I was getting into, but I signed up for a 100-mile race. I literally chose it based on, there's like a website that shows you what buckle each race gives you. So I chose like this buckle. I don't know if you know the Duncan Ridge Trail, but it was so much elevation. I think it was like 40,000 feet of air, whatever it was some insane amount of elevation. And it was just this crazy, like sort of Laz-like race out in the country in Georgia, and it ended up being amazing because that's now my home place where I train. That's my main trail, so I'm used to a lot of elevation, and I get a lot of elevation even though I'm not from out west.
Anna, what race was that? Was that the Buyer?
It's
a different one.
A few races on that trail, but one is Baby Dragon, one is Fierce Dragon.
Baby Dragon, okay.
There's a couple other, not Georgia Death Race, but there's a couple others that are out there.
Oh, I've been on that trail once. So when you said brutal trail, yes, it tore me apart. I have a picture from it. I have evidence of running on it in the rain, and the bramble and the trees just tore my legs apart. Like I still have scars from running. I did the Cruel Jewel, which is on part of that.
That's exactly right. Well, congratulations. I know it's an insane race. Yeah, and then on top of all that, there's bears and other wild. I mean, you're like really out there.
Yeah. So that's just right in your backyard. That's pretty awesome. What a good way to get into ultra running.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I started out, getting a lot of elevation. And then, I just, that race really had like not a lot of support. So it was interesting to go from that to see what Tahoe was like, and then to go on to Cocodona and races that are supported in other ways.
So you weren't like a one and done 100. You were like this is what I'm going to do now.
Yeah, I think that this is a chapter in my life. I think I'm like at the height of the chapter now, sort of have a few races this season. I don't know if I'll be able to continue to do a few every year going forward, but like right now I'm all in it. I love it. It's definitely, it's a big new thing in my life.
You mentioned that you went straight through the hundreds pretty quickly, or the 100 distance pretty quickly, and you went to the 200s. And it is such a smaller community and such a more niche space inside of the ultra running community, and it just seems smaller. Of course, I was an aid station captain at Monster 300. I've aid station captain at Moab a couple years in a row. Mm-hmm. I've done Cocodona last year in 24, done a couple Moabs in 2020 and 2022. So I see that as well, and it does seem just like even a smaller community on top of the ultra running community in the 100 world, and then the 200 world, 200 plus world seems to be even just a bit smaller. You mentioned like the FOMO of missing out, of hanging out with your friends or seeing them in the same platform. I couldn't believe how many people I knew at the Monster 300. I mean, out of 300 runners, how many do you think you were have been in contact with in the past?
Yeah, it definitely is a niche within the niche. And then the other thing is, Brian, even if you're not directly connected to someone, because you didn't you both ran a race with, this other guy that, you have, like, even for example, one thing that I do that's, I think, a little bit unique that I love is I always just find my pacers. They're very rarely like people I know ahead of time. So that's like, I even have examples from Monster. Like I just was connected with a random person who another friend had seen, like this athlete was hanging out in Arizona preparing for Cocodona, and maybe they could come help me. And it turns out that this person, like I had heard a story about them earlier on the trail and not realized it was my future pacer. And it's just a very small community. So even when you don't know someone, you're like one link removed from them. We're all doing the same, it used to be 3 races. Now it's probably like 10 races, but we're all doing the same 10 races. Yeah, it's a very special community in that way. It's also just so diverse, people from all parts of the country, from the city, from the country, all different kinds of experiences, all different kinds of religions. Like I love the diversity that it's brought to my life.
What did your training look like for 300 miles? It said you said you signed up a little bit late onto the wait list. So did you get training right off the get-go, even on the wait list? Because it is kind of hard to train on the wait list.
You asked me before the podcast if any questions were off limits, and I should have mentioned this one because I definitely did not have a model training plan for this race at all, and I do not recommend this approach. But this is one of my first races. I had a coach, and this is one of my first races without a coach, and I am just sort of very I just sort of always think things are going to work out, and that I can sort of think myself through things. And so the approach that I took with this race was not very consistent training. That said, I will say that I practice Bikram yoga regularly. So that's also heat training. And in October and December of 2024, I ran 10 miles a day for the whole month. That being said, that was several months before the race, and there wasn't a lot of consistency between that and the race. But I just sort of have this idea that if I can do something, I can do 5 times it, right? So I knew I could run 10 miles a day. I just assumed then I could run 50 miles a day for days on end. I know the logic breaks down when you say it like that, but in my mind, that's just always what I thought. I also really, really believe, we always say us, the niche in the niche. We all always say that so much of it is in your head, right? It's 90% your mind and 10% your body, whatever. And I just really subscribe to that so little of this race is actually about your physical fitness. I mean, of course, you got to be a certain level of physically fit and comfortable in the wilderness to go out there and make it 5 days. There's no question. But at a certain point, I think there are so many things that you can do and prepare yourself for that are towards the race that are more valuable than just getting more miles out there. Whether it's really honing in on a foot strategy, or really thinking through the details of drop bags or nutrition, or how you're going to carry things, or what you're going to do right before the race, or how you're going to react in certain situations, whether you practice visualization or some other kind of way to open your mind going into the race. I just think there's so much of that's really valuable, because that all takes less time than training. Also, I really focused on that before the race and sort of was okay, I believe I'm physically fit enough, And everything else is like, how can I handle, the rough situations that are thrown at you when you're running. So that's how I'm going to answer the question about how much training I did.
Well, it's great. Was the Summit 200 your last previous finish or race?
That's another great question, especially because this is not reflected on my ultra sign up, but I also started a race on the Duncan Ridge Trail in January, a 200-mile race that I dropped at mile 70. So I had a 70-mile run a few months before the race. It was actually so fortuitous that I dropped that race because I had received an email from Cocodona during that race saying, you have 48 hours to accept this spot in Cocodona, and had I not done that, I may have missed the opportunity to press that button.
It was fate. You were meant to be there.
Yeah. But anyway, all that said, that put me then suddenly doing the Monster and Cocodona in one season, which those two races are about 3 weeks apart from the end of the Monster till Cocodona starts. That's the period I'm in right now. So we're about 2 weeks out from the inaugural Monster 300. Should I say a few words about that race, Brian, or do you have any specifics?
Sure.
Yeah. It was awesome. I loved it. It was so fun to be out there with friends. And this was like really my first race with my friends from across the country this season, I guess. So sweet to be back together with everyone. It was sort of bizarre how it started in different waves. So I wasn't necessarily with like all of my friends in the beginning. That was a little bit weird, but the field did sort of feel like it like constricted before it spread out. So I was in the third wave, which was the second wave to leave, I guess. And like one of my best running buddies, Paul Johnson, was one wave behind me. They started an hour earlier, so he caught me by mile 7. So like it wasn't that long, before you saw people. But yeah, that was right after the first aid station. I made a few. I have a coach and a crew who are very organized and well put together, and that's the only reason I like to make it through these things, because I am very like scattered, and even then when I was trying to be organized, it didn't work out that well. So first of all, when I get to pack and pick up, my drop bags are packed like all entirely wrong. I had calculated how many calories, but for some reason all the wrong aid stations, so that was not helpful. But I made another big mistake early on in the race, which is for some reason I thought there was a drop bag at mile 6.6, the first aid station. I'm like, okay, I'm going to set myself up for nutrition and eat all this food before the 7-mile aid station, before realizing, of course, there's not more food there. But that was fine, whatever. It was the beginning of the race. My buddy Paul caught up with me. We ended up spending the first 105 miles together, which was really fun, and through a few nights with a variety of other friends. We've got another friend we race with a lot, Rebecca, so we spent a couple nights with her. What can I tell you about the beginning of the race there? It was quite apparent from early on that the aid stations were a little bit like wanting. And so I was very grateful that Ed had the foresight, thanks to something I learned from another runner named Charity, to bring backpacking meals. So that's really what got me through those first few days, is we had dehydrated meals we could add water to and eat at the aid stations.
I think that so the only other year that I can remember that we did a staggered start was COVID in Moab in 2020. We did a staggered start, and I don't mind a staggered start. There's reasons for it. We weren't in town all together for COVID reasons, but it just it does compile us and then spread us back out at a later stage in the race. So you're only kicking the can down the road. And I think that's what the early aid stations felt as well. They had a lot of people. By the time you guys got to me, you were spread back out again at 250. But in those earlier first day and a half, the first 36 hours or so, everyone was compressed a little bit more before they did spread out eventually.
And I wonder with other staggered starts, or even at Moab, did they stagger it so that the fastest runners are in the back? Is that always how they do it? Yeah. Yeah. So for example, when we got into the first real aid station at Gila, there was carnage everywhere. There were so many people there. All the chairs are broken. There's people lying on the ground. They have they're backed up. The volunteers were doing as best they can, but there was just way too many people there. All the cots, everything was taken up. All the blankets, all the cots. There were literally, people who just ran 50 miles sitting on the floor. The toilets were over. It was bad there. My friend Paul jokes that I gave my famous line at that aid station, which I reserve for just certain aid stations, which is we gotta get the fuck out of here. It's more toxic here than it is out there. Let's just get out. So that was our first drop bag. We like tried to be quick there because it was just bad vibes there. You know, people were negative.
Yeah.
It was a sad story at that time. Yeah, and then we went to Tortilla Aid Station, and then through the night, and we ended up at Freeman early the first morning. That's the first time you see your crew. So that was good. Actually, Paul's crew couldn't make it, so he jumped in my crew vehicle with me. We changed, slept, maybe for an hour or so. That was the first time I ran the whole race, was coming into Freeman. I have a very consistent, just like hiking pace. But coming into Freeman, it was about to storm. So I ran the last few miles, which was fun, and made it. I was in the vehicle for the entire storm, so that was great. We ran with the runner named Andrew Marvin during that period, and our friend Rebecca. So that was fun and beautiful, and just like Freeman couldn't come early enough. Yeah, so sort of refueled at Freeman, slept, and then me, Rebecca, and Paul took off for Black Hills, which was the next aid station.
What is the mileage of Freeman, just to kind of give a perspective?
Let me see. So Freeman's like 75. That's the first time you see your crew. Yeah, so the first time you have a drop bag, crazily, is at 45. The first time you see your crew is at 75. And then the first time you can pick up a pacer is at 105. So the three of us ran to Black Hills. That was fun, like running through the night with my two buddies. They both wanted to stop and rest at Black Hills, and I didn't necessarily want to, but always weighing what you're talking, like it made sense. I would have preferred to stay with them versus get 10 minutes ahead of them and then have to sleep on the trail or whatever. And that proved to be a good decision. I will say I came into Black Hills aid station, and like I already knew, we had already decided that we were going to sleep. That's, like we voted, that's what we were going to do. So I was already aware I was just going to be milling about that aid station. But they were supposed to have pizza there. Like they made this big deal to put out this menu ahead of time, like how Cocodona does. But I'm sure it's just me and was in my own mind. But like you get there to this aid station after how many miles, and it was like, when they say pizza at Cocodona, like you're coming into Crown King, there are boxes and boxes of large pizzas with all the different toppings. You can take as many slices of pizza as you want. I like fill my backpack up. And so I thought this was going to have pizza, but it was like these little dollar store pitas with some like sausage. I mean, again, the volunteers were doing the best they could, but it was like not enough for me in that. I was like, I was going to eat a large pizza.
It was like a kid's pizza. It was like the kids' table pizza.
It was like, I'll have 7 of those, please. But can you, Again, they were doing the best they could. It was not the volunteers. It was just a very remote aid station, and my expectations were high, and that's what it was. Yeah, but anyway, so then when we left Black Hills, then I got really tired. So my two friends had slept, and then I wasn't able to, and really tired on the trail to Oracle, which is like, I think just another maybe 15 miles or so, but I just couldn't keep it together at that point. So me and my buddy Paul just laid down on the trail for a quick trail nap that like breathed at least a little bit of life into me. At that point, I really started to see that my friend Paul, who I raced with all the time, was having the leans. And so that was like mile 95. He started to like really lean badly. And I brought it to his attention at some point, hoping he could straighten it out. But like at a certain point, I got 10 more miles to run. How many times are you going to tell him, like, it is what it is? So that I was actually pretty sad about that, because I had totally incorrectly assumed that would be the end of his race. Spoiler alert, it was not, and he finished. I knew that was the first time he was going to see his family and his sons. So, so we get there to Tiger Mine, and it's sort of understood that we're going to separate. I actually thought it was going to be sort of the end of his race, and we were both coming into Pacer, so it was perfect. So I met my first Pacer, someone I had never met before, just met like on the monster running group at Tiger Mine, a friend named David Jason, and we had just a total blast together. We just like hit it off right away at Tiger Mines, ran a beautiful run to Oracle together. We also, at Tiger Mine, we thought that we were going to see my crew at Oracle, which makes no sense because it was just 9 miles later, but that's what we thought. So I give my crew my puffy, my carrying capacity, my everything. We were only going 9 miles, everything. Gave her everything, extra food, everything. And as we're coming into Oracle, it's very clear that it is not, Oracle, it is not an aid station. I do not have a puffy there. I do not have enough food. And we actually, at this point, have to haul ass up Mount Lemmon because we cannot let me be outside when it's dark out because of how cold it was going to get. So that's what we did. We had the best time. We hauled them out. We just did the best we could. We were like, this is what we've got. Everything that was in my drop bag, we were just going to make it work. Like, we're both somewhat experienced in the woods. We just figured we were going to make it work. So then it was 17 pretty brutal miles up to Mount Lemon, but we just had so much fun. He's an entrepreneur, and yeah, we talked about business a ton and had a great time together.
It's so interesting though. It's so interesting though, because I have both been the volunteer pacer for somebody that I've never met before, and I don't think I've ever. I might have had a pacer or two that I've never met before pace me as their athlete. Man, do you have any experience with that, or are you going with people you know?
You know, I've gone with people that I loosely know, but I didn't know them well. So I think maybe, Anna, what's so fun about that is you have all those hours out there, and maybe you met them on a chat. I've met mine like at an event very briefly, and then was like, "Do you want to pace me?" Absolutely. Then you have all these hours to just get to know each other, and you get to start off with like the surface level, and then you have miles and hours to dig in. So I love it. So yeah, I've had a couple of pacers help me out that I didn't really know, and now we're friends for life. I'm sure you feel the same way. I mean, you want to go and pace them now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will even say like more so beyond just getting to spend like, when do we ever get to spend uninterrupted hours with someone without cell phones in a beautiful natural, scene when we need them? Like I needed him sometimes, I was sort of falling apart at certain points. It's just the most magical. If you could create the perfect situation to quickly build a meaningful relationship, it would be this. And I get to do it like over and over and over again in a race. I mean, it's seriously one of the best highlights of ultra running for me is just these like very connected relationships that form so quickly. And like you said, like, are timeless ultimately.
I think we're really vulnerable in those moments too when we're out on the trail and you need somebody. I think that also puts our guard down, so we're able to talk a little more openly and candidly. Personally, I've made bonds with my pacers in either scenario that are unmistakable, and I still talk to those people to this day.
Totally. I mean, I had such a good time with David Jason, and he brought me into Catalina, and then it was this I was very sad to be separated from him, and it happens quickly. Like I wasn't sleeping there, I wasn't going to spend time at that aid station. It was just this like instant, and then you want to like be up and excited to meet the next person, but I really didn't feel like I had said goodbye to him. Like we had just had this 40 hours or whatever it was. So that was actually like quite a hard transition, and for some reason we had a great time together. I hear people talking about these sections specifically to like Mount Lemon to Charlotte, or like going up Mount Lemon and coming down, and how hard they were. And I don't mean to say I think they were easy. I'm not saying that at all. But that really wasn't my focus. Like we were just having such a good time. And at some point at Charlotte Gap or somewhere around there, I guess I must have called my crew and I was like, I want to take these sneakers off. This is not comfortable. And for some reason, I was really focused that my crew should buy me Crocs for the next section, but not name brand Crocs. I really wanted off-brand Crocs. I was really focused on that. And so I get into Catalina, and there's fake Crocs there for me and a whole large pizza, which I ate the entire thing and quickly said goodbye to David, and then like quickly was like with this other person was like changing the channel on TV. And that was fun because my second pacer's name was Kevin Russ. And that was really fun because I knew that he was going to pace me for 20 miles. And then I had another pacer, and then he was going to pace me for the long section at the end for like 65 miles. So it was like our first time meeting, and then we get to like meet again. So that was for 18 miles on pavement. That was pretty miserable for an ultra. One thing I loved about this race was how much single track trail there was. And on the flip side, the thing I hated about this race was how much road there was. It was just a lot. I have never run on pavement for that many miles, anywhere near that. But anyway, so then, Kevin picked me up. I kept thinking we were going to link back up with Paul, because at that point I had heard he was still on the race, and I didn't hook up with him all the way until the end, which I'll tell that story. I'll quickly fast forward through the rest of this race and tell that story. But all this to say, one thing that Paul and I developed at this race was we developed the habit of calling each other during the race. And I usually never try to not use my phone at all during the race, but it was so fun to be able to call him, see how he was doing, what was he passing, like what was I experiencing in the race, what was he experiencing. So that was sort of a fun way to use technology during a race. All right, I'm going to fast forward because I feel like this race story is taking. Okay,
you're fine.
20 miles with Kevin. So like meeting this new friend, wearing Crocs. Fortunately, it
You
ended
did
up
wear the Crocs. You did wear the
I wore
Crocs.
the Crocs and it worked perfectly. So it was
Why
like
Crocs? Anna, why Crocs? Like
I have
what
no
was the
idea.
thought?
I've never like been a Croc. My friend Rebecca, who I was running with for a while, her friends are all really into Crocs, and I had spent some time with her in Colorado last summer, so maybe it rubbed off on me. I have no idea. You know how you get, I don't know, for some reason fixated in this. I just want
But
to
they
take
worked.
years off. They worked almost perfectly, except that like of the 18 miles of like pavement, maybe 2 or 3 miles was on the road, the actual road where there's like debris and stuff, not a bike path. So for those 3 miles, it wasn't great because stuff would get in them, but yeah, mostly it worked. I didn't like get new blisters or anything, so that was sort of good. And I was ready to put my sneaker cap on and that. During that section, that's the first time I really noticed I'm in good shape and everybody around me is not in good shape. And it was really clear because it was during the day. Kevin and I were really booking it, having a great conversation on this bike path, and people are like keeled over on the side of the bike path and just like really struggling.
What's the bike path mileage roughly?
So that section, for example, is 18 miles and like 2 or 3 of them were on the street. But
Where in the
overall,
course,
like,
though?
over the course, it's like 60 miles of pavement.
No, but where in the course are you? Like 120 miles?
Yeah. Okay. So when you first hit the bike path, you're at 158.
Oh, okay, so you're deep. So you're 165 miles in, and people are keeled over on the side of the trail. They're feeling it. It's cumulative. They've been working hard, and now they're suffering.
Yes, people are suffering, and what I start to notice is, I mean, I've noticed this in many other races, but this is when I start to notice in this race that these are people who are like running past me, oftentimes throughout the day, right? So like they say, like a lot of times people say things to me like, oh, we're leapfrogging in this race. And I'm like, sort of, but I'm going the exact same pace the whole time, like you're leapfrogging, which is fine. It's just a different approach. But this is when I really started to notice that people who started the same time with me or had spent time with the day before and had passed me are like now really suffering. Maybe got a little too confident there because then when I switched paces again, I had a friend, Krista, who actually, she's also a pacer I had met from having not known her, but I met her 2 years ago. She paced me at Cocodona. So she was coming back to Arizona. She's from Minnesota. She was going to be up in northern Arizona for the Cocodona training run. So she came down to pace me for what I didn't realize was like the entire pavement section. So I feel bad that I had her come in for that. But she came from Minnesota, 60 miles with me and Rebecca on pavement. And I definitely crashed in that next section. It was suffering hard. What happened was when I came into Relito, I was going to be in the van for 3 hours and sleep for maybe like, 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes and get like a real sleep before moving on. Just something happened with my alarm and my phone and it turned off and I woke up after an hour and I was like, okay, I feel good. Let's go. And that was a mistake because I really suffered through that next long section on pavement to where like I literally was so close to booking a hotel. There was a hotel on the course. I thought it was a Mirage. I could see it for like a long way. I'm like, I'm certain that's a Hilton. And I'm like looking at
Did it have a big pizza on the front of the hotel?
I'm like, I'm actually really glad that we did not stop at that Hilton because for a variety of reasons, but it started to get so hot during the day that those nighttime hours were much more productive. So had I slept then when it was cool, it would have like messed up what happened later. So basically like we finally get to Valencia, which is this sad excuse for an aid station on the side of the road, which has one medic there and 2 DNF'd runners running this really important aid station. So there's basically like no staff. Every chair in the place is broken. Nobody knows what to do. I mean, they're doing the best they can. They also hadn't slept for like 23 hours. We were so grateful that they were there, but that place was such a shit show. And it was so demoralizing to come into after the 60 miles of bike path. And then you're going to the highway. You're literally on the highway then for, I don't know how many, maybe 10 miles or something on an asphalt highway. Fortunately, I have picked up from my previous pacer, Kevin, I have picked up the habit of carrying a hiking umbrella, which is a game changer. I've read that that's like makes it 15 degrees cooler. which is definitely my experience. Although when the heat from the asphalt is also coming from the bottom, that's another factor. But yeah, it was just so hot on that road. We were on that road for so long. I was so grateful to have the umbrella. And then we get back on a sort of Jeep road and then eventually a trail, and we get to this aid station called Pistol Hill, which is no crew. And again, there is carnage everywhere. It's so hot. I'm like certain I can't go on. There's no place to lay down. It's just like two little tents, and there's 30 people. Will was running that aid station and doing a great job. There's just too many people.
Will Brenner.
Yeah. And there was a RV like across the site that was like, I don't know if it was the guy who do the ham radio, or like it was something having nothing to do with the race. And I would like use the porta potties, and I walk over and I'm looking, and I walk over there and I'm like, is there any way I could sleep in your van? And they let me. And it was a game changer. This poor guy, he's like, it's not mine, it's my friend's, but sure. Is it an emergency? I'm like, well, define emergency. I'm like, it's important. Yeah. It's an emergency.
Sure.
He lets me into his friend's van. I literally lay down on top of this guy's clean laundry, which is on his bed.
That's so nice.
And he doesn't have the heat from the vehicle on, so it's just a sauna in there, but I don't care. It's a sauna outside also. Anyway, this sweet guy, his name is Les. He's like bringing me water, he's whatever. I ended up sleeping there for a couple hours, which was a game changer, mostly because it passed the hottest hours of the day. And that's when I realized I am just so white. Like, I am not cut out for this like noon to 4 p.m. time frame.
Mm-hmm. So, I will jump in and just say, at mile 251, as the aid station captain, we were keeping an eye on the weather and keeping an update of the temperatures each day as each day passed by. And you started out cooler in the race, and each day got 5 to 7 degrees hotter. Yeah. So as you're getting more tired and getting farther down the road, and you're moving south, the air is just getting hotter each day. So as well as you are feeling the fatigue of the race and it just feels hotter, it actually is getting hotter every day as well. So that's the outside perspective looking in, is that I don't know if you guys realize that, but it was literally getting hotter every day.
Yeah, we started to realize that. Yeah, so I waited a while to come down from Pistol Hill when it wasn't so hot out, and I got some good sleep. That was the end of Krista's sentence, as I'll call it, her pacing shift.
Did Kristen hang out in the van with you, or this camper?
It was just an SUV that I slept in. Oh, did she hang out with me? No, she is an ER doctor, so she served as the medic at the tent while I was sleeping. Yeah, she put her skills to good use. Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Don't you always feel so bad about that when you invite a pacer? I've done that before, and you're like, we're going to have the best time, and then they get a section with you where you're just a monster. And my friend Matt, if you're listening, Matt, you always have those, and you're like, I'm so sorry. But I also think it's always worse in our minds, right? Like, our pacers are there because they have a servant's heart. They're having a blast on some level, the same way you're in some level having a blast. So
yes, and there was a lot of times during that section when I wasn't having a blast. Fortunately, my friend Rebecca was also with us, and Rebecca and Krista hit it off, so I felt blessed that I wasn't like, my low moments wasn't bringing like the group down. And I was glad that there was two of them to outvote me on the hotel thing, because I would have asserted myself if there was two of us. But with three of us, it felt like. All right, so then Krista delivers me back to Kevin at Gabe Zimmerman. And now we have like a really long stretch together. It's like 65 miles that you could not change out pacers during this next section.
And it's almost to the finish, right? I think I met Kevin then.
Yes.
At my aid station.
Exactly. Yeah, you met Kevin at Oak Tree, which, God, coming into your aid station, Brian, was like a oasis. It was like, finally, there was food. There was not enough, in my opinion, there was not enough food on this course. Like, just not enough calories. Like, I don't want to poop on any of the volunteers who were out there, but it was the way it felt, and I'm sure my perception was colored by my experience, but it would feel like you're running like 22 miles with no aid in the desert, and you would come into an aid station and they'd be like, well, we have some tortilla and vegan cheese. You're like, what? I need like a horse, like, what are we talking about here? In fact, Brian, when we left your aid station, we're like, why didn't we get 6 of these? Mm-hmm. You threw it all in a burrito for us, but most often it felt like just, either the food wasn't there, or for some reason the volunteers didn't know where it was, but it didn't feel like there was enough support on this course.
At Oak Tree, you came in before the mad rush, so it seemed like you were gaining some momentum. I think you came in before your friend Rebecca as well, because I think she came in a little bit later, and then they wound up camping out for the afternoon. I mean, they being like the 40 people behind you. and they came in around noon, and they didn't leave until 4 or 5 o'clock when the sun went down. And it seemed like the mid to back of the pack, of course, the heat was getting hotter, like I had mentioned already, but it seemed like everyone was moving in like groves through the night, and they were taking these long siestas during the day. And so I had 40 people in that aid station. Right after you left, they all came in and just camped. Yeah, I mean, they camped out, and so we were like trying to figure out shade and try to, just create more and more and more.
Were really hot too, right?
Yeah, I mean, the sleeping tents are a little thicker canvas, and they work great at night when you put a propane heater in them. But during the day, it's quite the opposite. It's pretty warm inside of those things, and they retain a lot of heat.
Yeah,
unfortunately, so it's not a great shade spot. We would imagine like, oh, this sleeping tent would be a great shady spot, but it's just too hot in there to really hang out.
Yeah, and it was.
Anna, I have a gear question. At this point, have you put shoes back on, or are you still wearing your Crocs?
Oh yeah, no, I just wore the Crocs for those first 18 miles on pavement.
Okay.
I didn't recall seeing it in Crocs. I would have probably noticed that. So yes, so she put shoes back on.
I just was dying to hear, like, when did you put the Crocs back on, and when were your feet like, no, those were so comfortable?
They were, but then I was ready to get out of them.
Okay.
Yeah, it was miraculous. It worked out.
Did you bring the Crocs back to?
Actually, they are in Arizona because they're waiting with the rest of my crew bag for Cocodona.
All right. We'll get to that too, because that's a great story.
During this next section with my now really good friend Kevin, we just had such a good time together. One of many things that I figured out during that section together was Kevin really helped me articulate, which was already something that was already true for me, but I just didn't have the language around it, which was that if I'm looking at my racing season or like what I'm doing this year, Cocodona is my favorite race, and that's my A race. And that was so helpful just to be able to say that, even though it was already true, but I had never said it. And saying that really helped inform my strategy for the rest of this race. Because while at Pistol Hill is when I started to figure out I got to sleep during the day and stay up at night, where I really put that into practice is after I saw you at Oak Tree, we kept going. And then I guess we ran overnight and we came into Apache Springs. I'm having trouble remembering that aid station. But then when we came into Casablanca, we ran overnight, right? So we ran overnight, we came into Casablanca, and it was like 7:30 in the morning. It was sweltering hot. It was 88 degrees. I felt like, I live in Atlanta, and I practice Bikram yoga. Like, I'm not used to heat. And I just felt like, at one point I literally just slept on the trail from like 7 to 7:15 in the morning because it was just so hot. I just didn't feel like I could keep moving. And at that point is when it really like came into focus for me. I was like, oh, I'm doing well in this race. Like, I've never been this far ahead of, this far into the pack or whatever, towards the front. And this is not my A race. So what do I want to do right now? Do I want to push? I only have 16 miles left. I can get this race done probably in 145 or 147 hours or whatever it was going to be. Or do I just want to sit here and chill and miss the whole day of the heat and then run at night and still finish this race in plenty of time and probably be in better shape for my next race? And there were a couple other factors also that I was weighing. Like, I really wanted to connect back with my buddy Paul, but he was like 8 hours behind me. So there were a few things, but primarily I really, like, in that moment made the strategic decision and missed the heat. So I basically got there at 8 in the morning and I left at like 4 in the afternoon or something like that. So I got a solid, probably like 6 hours of sleep there, ate a ton of food, got my feet taped up, waited for the sun to go down, and then ran that last leg with my friend and coach, Trina.
Awesome. How did you celebrate at the end?
That's a great question. How did I celebrate? A lot of times with these ultra marathons, like the finish line is a little bit, leave something to be desired just because the finishers are so spread out. There's not a lot of people there. I think I finished at like midnight. But I don't know. Yeah, we just went back to the Airbnb and hung out and talked about the race and did that for like the next 2 days. Went out for meals and talked about the race.
And you stayed right there in Patagonia?
We drove up to, I guess we went to Tucson, but I really don't even know. I was so out of it. I just, got in the car and went where my crew drove me. We had an Airbnb and yeah. I think it was Tucson, and it was interesting because I saw 2 people from the race at breakfast the next morning, which was just interesting because the race was so far away. But there wasn't a lot of places to stay in Patagonia.
So Anna, would you do this race again?
I don't think I will, but I'm really glad I did it this time. It was fun, and it was a good experience. There are parts of it that were beautiful. I think, like, compared to some other races, maybe the beauty wasn't as diverse. Like, for example, Brian and I were talking about the Summit 200. That's like a very difficult race, but it's like around every bend is a view more beautiful than the bend before. It's like almost unbelievable and jaw-dropping, and the scenery changes so much. Same with Cocodona. You go so many different environments and microclimates and flora and fauna, and this I just found to be like a little bit more monotonous. So I'm glad I did the 300-mile distance, but I won't do this race again.
What else do you have coming up this season, Anna? I know you have Cocodona in 2 weeks, I think from today, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And I have Summit. Are you going back to Summit?
I was just talking to one of my athletes that will be at Summit as well, and I'm going to reach out to Chase and see about volunteering again and maybe being out there for the course itself, so we'll see.
Yes,
sure.
Come out. I would love to see there. I've got to defend my third place female.
Look at that.
This is what happens when you do small races and you're just like the gritty, you just won't quit. There's only 2 other women in the race. No, but that race is so beautiful. I'm so excited to go back out there. Like we said, last year was the inaugural year, but I think they're a really small, intimate family race company, and they're really committed to improving areas that needed improvement. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what they can do out there. They really won me over the way they put on that race, and how small and sweet it was, and just how gorgeous. And then, yeah, that's all I have on the calendar right now. I had an unfortunate DNF at the Divide 200 last year, which was I had lasted all the way up to last year, 2024, without ever wearing a watch when I ran. So I never knew I didn't even know what the word splits meant, but I didn't know anything. I never knew how far it was to the next aid station. I never knew anything. I was just like, ah! And then last year at the Divide, me and Paul were running, and we accidentally in the middle of the night must have turned around. So we went from checkpoint 2 almost all the way to checkpoint 3, and then accidentally got turned around at night. It stayed on the course. We were on the course the whole time, but ended up back at checkpoint 2. And I realized if I would have had a watch, it would have told me that we were going in the wrong direction. So at that moment, I decided to invest. So anyway, there's a part of me that wants to go back to the Divide and conquer that, because that is also a beautiful, on the verge.
Where is that? Yeah.
Race.
Where and when is that?
That is in Calgary in Canada.
Okay.
And it's in, I don't know if it's in August or September. I think September. Mm-hmm. And it is also beautiful. I will say it's like, I don't know if treacherous is the right word, but that's the closest word I can think of, where you're literally like on ridge lines where you're like balancing on the mountain. Like it's a very serious race. It's by the company that does Canada Death Race. They also have another 200 coming up this year. But yeah.
All right. Those are exciting. Yeah. How are you feeling for Cocodona? Are you feeling pretty refreshed from your 6 hours of sleep at the last aid station and all the travel and all the things? Are you feeling pretty good for Cocodona?
If I'm really honest, I want to, my instincts be like, I feel great, I'm awesome. If I'm really honest, I am very tired still. So it's 2 weeks out, and I just still cannot catch I don't feel like I have enough rest. I did my first run, and I guess my last run yesterday, which was 6 miles, and yeah, I'm tired. So I'm really hoping I can get good sleep the next week, and that my body will just remember the experience, and somehow I'll be able to take me through to Cocodona.
What will your fueling strategy be? Oh, sorry. I was wondering, in this next week, what will you focus on nutrition-wise, just to try to store and...
In this next week? Well, historically, this is like a much bigger topic. Could be another 10-hour podcast. But historically, I'm trying to go into races pretty fat adapted, so that my body doesn't need carbs in the same way. And that is how I went into the Monster. That being said, I'm not sure. I don't think I'm nearly as fat adapted as I was going into the Monster, because I've been eating junk food for 2 weeks. If I'm my best self, my focus will be on getting fat adapted. I think I can kick my way back into fat adaptation if I'm strict for the next 10 days, or I'll go into Cocodona without that advantage. But either way, it'll be okay.
Anything else to note? What about your pacers? Are you going to have any pacers at Cocodona? Repeat pacers or some new ones, or what's going on there?
We have a motley crew lined up for Cocodona as well. I have a friend, Jen, who I met at Cocodona last year, and she tells a cute story about, she said she was at the top of the Coconino Plateau, crying because her feet were all busted. We had been leapfrogging a little bit in the race, so we knew each other, but she said she tells the story that she was just, all the way low. And she says that I said to her, your feet are fucked. They're going to hurt if you sit here. They're going to hurt if we walk. They're going to hurt if we run. So let's go run. So she tells that story of one of the few times I, from her perspective, helped her out of a hole. But anyway, it's so amazing because her and her husband and their friend are going to crew me for the whole second half of the race, crew and pace me. So that's awesome. I got that chapter taken care of. And then, I have some other friends who will support me in the beginning. We'll just sort of I've got, do you know John, who was a medic at the Monster? I don't think he was at Oak Creek. But anyway, somebody I met, he's run Moab, a medic that I met at the Monster. He's going to pace me for a couple sections. And then hopefully my friend Kevin will come and pace me for the last section as well.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's fun hearing about the collection of pacers and runners, and there's so much behind this in the sport that is just fun. Even just talking about what it takes to pace, I think it's, for me, I know I've asked friends who aren't as big of runners to pace me, and their number one response is you can't keep up. But it's funny because hearing stories like yours are a reminder that it's not about keeping up. It's about keeping you focused and fed and the energy up. So the pacing stories are fun to hear, and just the relationships you can build out of it. It sounds like you've really added a lot to those that you've had on the course with you.
Yeah, no, it's part of the fun for sure.
I think one of the struggles though with the 200 plus distance is finding a pacer that can go 50 plus miles sometimes, right? Because not all my friends can go 50 miles, even if it is at a slow pace. And even I sometimes can struggle to keep a positive mental attitude for 50 miles pacing somebody.
Yeah, I mean, like you're always weighing, right? Like we're always doing this, like weighing like the weight of the logistics and the heartbreak and excitement of trying to like organize pacers and like get everyone on a crew call and make sure these people are going to show up, and then replacing who dropped out last minute without, turning off your other pacers, like balancing all that mental load, which is really a lot, especially when you don't know the people, with the advantage. Like that's what I'm always trying to figure out. Like, we mentioned my friend Rebecca. I mean, she's basically decided like it's not worth it. And I totally get why. Like it's such a mental load to try and convene these people and get people to come through. I mean, I will say usually ultra runners, like they know what they're promising, like when they say yes, but of course, lives change, things change, lives change, you have to be flexible. But yeah, so far it's been worth it. Cocodona this year will be like my first race without like a proper crew, where I'll like definitely have drop bags in the beginning and need to figure that out. So that'll be, in terms of the mental load, that'll be different too.
Sounds like you're going to bring the Crocs as well, just as a backup plan.
I think I should.
All right. I mean, if they worked for you once, you can't deny that.
Although there's no road at Cocodona, right?
Oh, very little.
Yeah.
Gosh, if there is any, it's very little. If I recall.
Okay, if we never see road again.
Yeah. Oh, there was a little bit coming into Jerome, going through Jerome, like in the towns. I mean, like through Prescott, through Sedona. I mean, like when you get in and out of towns, you're on some pavement. I remember those now that I'm thinking about it, but it didn't seem significant, or it was in just small enough chunks that it wasn't miserable.
Yeah. Cocodona has some interesting twists this year because, like I mentioned, that Monster was my longest time on pavement ever, but Cocodona will be, for me and probably for a lot of the racers, the latest in a race they've ever run without a pacer. Like I can't remember exactly what the mileage is, but it's something like at mile, 180 or something. There's a few chapters where you don't have your pacer, which is sort of new dynamic there. Be interesting.
Yeah, with some athletes that I'm coaching, we've been looking at the course details for both the Sedona 125 and Cocodona 250, and looking at some of the changes. And I was trying to get out on some of the course on my way home from Monster volunteering, but I just couldn't make it out to, I can't think of the name of the trail outside of Sedona, but like one of the specific trails that's just a new section. Cliffhanger, right? The Cliffhanger Trail. Yeah, I was trying to go scout the Cliffhanger Trail because there's been a lot of chatter about that.
Looks beautiful.
But I never got to it, yeah.
I just sort of trust those guys. Like, I think they would have put us on something it's all dangerous. They would put us on something not safe.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be dangerous in that regard. I think it'll be challenging at night because it's just like Slick Rock. It's just like the Porcupine Rim Trail in Moab when you're finishing. And you're trying to find paint stripes on the ground, and when you're tired and exhausted and there's nothing to stick a marker to, a trail marker, and you're just trying to follow markings on the ground, on the rock itself. It's challenging. And so in the Cliffhanger area, I believe is similar with you're following white dots across a rocky terrain.
If anyone's going to figure it out, it's going to be those guys, though. So I think we'll be all right.
And I guess it'd be similar to like the Dells.
Exactly.
When you got into the Dells. And I fortunately was able to follow the white lines because unfortunately I was there at 3:00 in the afternoon, the hottest part of the day last year. And there was no one in there besides Deshauna, Joe, and myself. And we just, both of us had our phones out trying to navigate the dots.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean,
But it could have been worse at night, yeah.
I went through there, or at least that back part at night, and they had like, they do a good job with like glow sticks and whatever silly
Oh, okay.
stuff they do, but they work hard to try and keep you on course. And I'm sure, especially because that's a new section.
Well, Ana, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you stopping in and telling us all about the Monster 300. We wish you the best of success
Thank
in
you. I
2
look
weeks.
forward to seeing you out there.
I'll have so much FOMO here at Cocodona, but I got my start with Cocodona by watching the live stream religiously and basically not doing work for about a week. And so last year when I raced it, this is a side story, but last year when I raced it, I was a little bummed near the end and I couldn't figure out why I was like so bummed. And I was thinking, gosh, I was like, in my mind, I was always near the front of the race because I was watching the front of the race like unfold on the live stream. And here I haven't seen any of the live stream. So last year I finished the race. I came home and eventually got to do some rest on the in my downstairs living room with a laptop on my lap trying to work. And I put on the live stream and watched it like it never happened. So I watched it. I rewatched it like as if I wasn't there or anything. Yeah, it was great.
Well, the live streams.
So I'm ready to watch it again.
The live stream's a big reason I'm doing Cocodona too, because I really don't like watching TV or screens at all. And I knew, like, if I don't do this, I'm not going to get any work done. Like, I'm literally just going to be attached to the screen. I might as well just go out and do it. Things are so fun. Well, fun.
We're excited to follow along.
What's that?
I said we're excited to follow along. It's I share an office with a big runner too, and so it's funny because the office jokes around here is that if there's a big race going on, no one's doing any work. We're just all watching the live stream. So we'll be cheering on you from Colorado.
Love it. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
All the best, Ana. We'll talk soon. Take care.
Thanks, Ana.